Recording in progress. Hello, everybody, and welcome to School of Speech, presented by Speech Therapy PD. I'm your podcast host, Carolyn Dolby, and I am so glad you are tuning in today, and you will be glad too. Today, we have the amazing Dr. Sheryl Rosin with us for this episode titled, Will My Student Ever Talk? Climbing the Language Mountain. Sheryl is a speech language pathologist and certified autism specialist with 28 years of experience in the field. Dr. Rosin has presented nationally and internationally on topics related to evidence-based practices and assessment and interventions for individuals with ASD. She is the owner of Palm Beach Special, no, excuse me, I'm going to do this again. I'm going to do it. Palm Beach Speech and OT Specialists, PBSOS, and PlayPal Interventions. All right, y'all, we are getting settled in for another great episode with another amazing clinician. I want to remind everyone that every episode of School of Speech is offered for ASHA zero point 0.1 ASHA CEUs. And if your state license requires live CEUs and you are listening in today, well, first of all, thank you. And second, I do want to make sure that you get credit for participating today. So be sure to complete all the course modules, including the one that says complete course, before the end of today on your speech therapy account. All right, and I love, and I know my guests always love, and we encourage questions and comments from our live audience. And we already have people jumping in. Jump in, you guys that's listening. We've got a big group today. Jump in, let us know where you're from. I always like to see who's listening in and where you're coming from. So while you guys are jumping in, we were saying a big hi to you. I'm going to do a little more housekeeping. Just some disclosures. Dr. Rosin has a financial relationship with the Play Project. She is the supervisor and trainer for the organization with no non-financials to disclose. For me, I am a salaried employee for Portland Public Schools, and I do receive compensation from Speech Therapy PD for hosting School of Speech. Non-financial is that I do consult for school districts across the nation, supporting and developing their dysphagia programs, and also staff training. Okay, enough about me. Let's get into this with Dr. Sheryl Rosin. Hi, Sheryl, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much. Thanks for
Oh,
having me on to that tonight.
yeah, absolutely. I'm looking, we've got a lot of Jersey in the house, California, and we're coastal. We are bi-coastal. We've got, oh, hi everyone. I love this. I love this. All right. Well, I have been looking forward to this because I just think this topic just hits a lot of us, and I think we all agree. But I want to know if you don't mind sharing your journey. What really fuels your passion? How did you decide, or how did it decide you to be focusing and supporting families with autistic children? How did you get to be you?
Yeah. So yes, I'm a speech language pathologist. And, back in the day when I first started off in this field, I was the newbie working in an outpatient rehab facility in Michigan. That's where I'm originally from. I live in Florida now. But at that time, it was, the early to mid 90s. And that's when autism really started to come forefront into everybody's mind. And so that's when the DSM had changed. It was the DSM-4, and there was new criteria for autism. And really at that point, it was still like 1 in 10,000. But we seemed to get a lot of children at our facility back, where I was working at this outpatient facility. And, not that people didn't want to work with them, but because I was the newbie, I was assigned all of these new students and
Hmm.
autism. And I was, a new grad. So for me, it was pretty overwhelming just to be new. But I really took, a liking and found that I could create connection with these children very easily, where a lot of the other therapists didn't feel that way. And so I just really, became passionate about helping them. And so I decided that I was going to go back to school to get my PhD and specialize solely in autism. So I could
Wow.
be in the forefront of treating these individuals and using evidence-based practices and wanting to really understand, how to work with them in ways that would be beneficial and not trying to just, wing it all the time. So I was really fortunate at that time because the school I was in was coming out of moratorium for their PhD. So basically, I got to like create my own course study. And I got to look through the course catalog and pick courses that related to autism across every discipline you can name. So not only speech, but in pharmacology, in medicine, in social work, in psychology, in everything that had to do with autism. I would look through the course catalog and find something that applied. And I got to take courses to learn about autism more holistically and from so many different professional perspectives. And I was just hooked. And after that, I was like, this is my passion. These are my people. This is where I want to be. And I just can, like I said, connect really well. And I don't feel that there's many individuals with autism that I can't connect with in some way. And that's what just drives me and makes me feel like I want to keep working and helping and doing, this type of work with these individuals.
That is spectacular. And I'm going to say fascinating that you basically got to pick your own. Who gets to do that? I
Yeah,
mean,
it was
if
lucky.
you're like, I do. Cheryl Rosin gets to do that. That's who gets to do this. That is amazing. And I mean, if that doesn't tell you you're on the right path and you're doing what you're supposed to do, oh my gosh, incredible. Um, Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think that was really inspiring for us. So I think we're all here. We have that question and we're going to ask it. Will my child ever talk?
Yeah, and it's a question that I get, in my practice daily, multiple times a day. And so that's was really the precipice for like why I wanted to do a talk like this because I found that when I'm sitting with families, especially in the beginning, I didn't really have those answers. And I still, I don't have a crystal ball and I can't say what the future holds. But from evidence and from doing this long enough and from my personal and professional practice experience, I feel like there is a way to talk about this that's evidence-based, it's rooted in science, and that helps parents understand that, yes, will my child ever talk or, speak, especially in those non-speaking individuals, that there's a really good chance that they will if we believe in the process. And the process is very specific that, we will talk about. And I've seen it work over and over and over again because we presume competence from the get-go. We presume that these students will talk and we will help to get them there in whatever way that is possible. And non-speaking individuals may not have verbal output, but they can still talk in variety of ways. And so we want to help parents understand, if there is a lot of, output and verbal communication going on, that's great, but there's also other ways where we can talk and we will communicate, and that will happen through this process. But you have to trust in it and you have to believe in it and you have to, really convince parents sometimes of the way that I feel is most successful in getting children on the autism spectrum to talk. Because it's like I said, tried and true, I've seen it work and I've seen the success in it. And so sometimes we have to just sit down with parents and explain to them that there is, a path, and the path forward may not be the path that they are most comfortable with in the beginning because they want you to wave your magic wand, snap your fingers, and make them talk. And that's really not how this works. As much as
Mhm.
it's my biggest wish too. I'm a speech language pathologist. I want the child to talk. But we have to get there in ways that honor and respect the child for who they are and meet them where they're at. And we have
Yes.
to move from a bottom up approach and scaffold their learning so that we can build the foundation for what is true and real communication and not just try to have the child work from a top-down approach, which is not very communicative. It may be parroting or echoing or teaching a child to imitate, but those aren't always the foundation for true back and forth successful communication.
Oh, I'm literally on the edge of my seat right now, and my next question is, okay, start us at the beginning. Let's build that foundation. What is the first, I know probably maybe I'm jumping ahead just a moment about asking if you could give us some words of like what is something you might start with a parent that says, will my child ever talk? Just to give us just a script, just to get us started on like what would be a good first thing to say?
Yeah. So when I use a developmental relationship-based model in my practice. So with that being said, the way that I talk to parents about their child's, communication and answering that question, will my child ever talk? I always say, most likely, they
Oh,
will.
yeah.
So I do say, yes, most likely your child will talk, but I want you to be able to trust in this process. And the first, and most important thing is for us to build connection.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we start. And I tell that to the parent that your child has to trust me. They have to trust you. We have to work together. Hopefully, if that's possible in a school setting, that might be a little bit more challenging because the parents, aren't present in everyday therapy. But in my private practice, I use a very parent-mediated approach where parents are part of every day. And so I'm teaching them that we need to make every interaction a good interaction and really starting with connection and honoring that because we want connection versus compliance. So I don't necessarily want my child just to comply and imitate me if there's no connection, because then there's no meaning behind what we're saying. So that's where I start is let's focus on connection. Let's just pretend our brain fell out of our head and forget all the ways that you work or interact with your child right now. And I'm going to help you think about a different way to communicate with your child. And that way starts with really finding out what is the child's interest. What are the child's comfort zones? What is the child really interested in? And I use that as the motivation to help the child communicate. So it's not about stickers and the cookie or, using external reinforcers. It's about using internal or intrinsic motivation to create connection so that the child wants to and has a desire to talk and to communicate with the play partner or communication partner. And that's first foundation, before really anything else. So sometimes we have to go back, back to those very elementary skills of just being able to share attention with somebody and be able to then engage and relate to somebody. Because if we don't have that, we're not going to climb up, as you said, the metaphoric, language mountain. We have to start at the bottom where we're really grounded in what our pre-social communication goals. Those are what drive our future. Will my child talk? The answer to that. Because there are lots of children, especially children with autism, who talk, but they're not really communicating. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the big difference that parents sometimes don't really understand until we break that down for them and say, this is labeling things and count and saying numbers and, counting, saying ABCs or, things that they're repetitively doing. Yes, that's talking, but that's not having real back and forth communication. So when we say, will my child ever talk? It's not only helping the non-speaking individual say words, but it's helping them have that true back and forth interaction and communication that will get them into having a real relationship with somebody in their life.
I have to say, I've already written down some of these things that you have said that really have moved me. That our goal is connection, not compliance. That that is powerful, to really have that conversation. So in the schools, yes, we'll be talking with the parent, but we're also talking with, I take it when, like you're talking to the parent, we'd be talking to the staff,
Yep.
the paras, the paraeducators and the caregivers and the teachers, on really understanding that we need to build that connection, not just compliance, right? When you say, yeah, just labeling and or imitating when you said, I love that. Oh, Heather is also chiming in saying, I love that and try to live by that connection over compliance. Thanks, Heather. I think it is something that is powerful and worth mentioning again and again to everybody, that that's really what we want. Yeah, you want that real connection, and that real connection comes with uh, that. Well, you also brought, so the real interaction, sorry, that's what I was trying to say. That real interaction comes with connection. I think I was trying to say that a little different.
Right.
So I mean, seriously, we're barely out of the gate, and I am like in aha moments. I'm going to stop talking because I want you to continue. So, okay, let's start climbing that language mountain. We know that we are starting at the bottom, and that is with those that shared attention. Start
Yeah.
at the very beginning, shared attention and relating.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where I have to take, the parents to
Mhm.
walk them through this. Will my child talk? I'll say, all right, yes, and let's kind of see where they are on the language mountain. And here are the steps. So the first step is being able to share, just simply share attention with somebody, right?
Mhm.
When we're looking at each other, we're able to do so much with that. Not only are we able to see how our mouth moves, which is really important, for speech and for clarity of speech, but we're able to see all of that gestural communication that's happening, my face and my, expression and, and everything. I mean, 90% of 80%, sorry, of what we communicate is nonverbal.
Mm.
So if we're not sharing attention with someone, we're missing the big picture. Again, will my child talk? Well, they may talk, but they're not going to talk with emotion or understanding the feeling life of what's happening in a relationship with somebody because they're missing that very elementary step of shared attention, which happens from birth to 3 months of age.
Wow.
So when we think about that, how early shared attention happens, and we have our students with autism who are, not able to share attention with us into elementary school, we have a big hole in their
Mhm.
foundational development. And that's where how we have to go backwards, and we have to really work on that first before anything else. Because if they're not sharing attention with us, then, like I said, they're missing those key features of communication, but then they're not able to engage and relate to us. They might be able to engage, but they're not really relating to us because they're not looking at us. So yeah, things like, trying to help them to do that. And how do we work on getting, shared attention or gaze shift or joint attention? We are going to make ourselves look so exciting, so dynamic that, we're going to do it all through play and having fun. Because if we're not having fun, we're not doing it right. And that's the point of this, is that children should want to be with you. You want to build that connection with them so you can help move them up that language mountain. If I have to stand on my head, I'll stand on my head. If I have to sing silly songs and jump up and down and, do whatever that is that they like, I've got to be that visually powerful force in the beginning if the child is having a hard time sharing attention with me, because that is going to help them connect to then go to engagement and relating, so that then we can go to the next step, which is two-way back and forth communication. So now I understand, I'm looking at you, I'm engaging with you, and I can have that ping ponging, that back and forth interaction with gestures, pointing, showing, giving, looking, smiling, nodding my head,
Mhm.
right? I've got real communication. I am now talking to you through my gestural communication. And that is also very, very important. And students on the autism spectrum often do not use gestural communication. They are not pointing, they are not showing, they are not giving, they are not looking. And again, missing big parts of two-way back and forth interaction. And that's what it takes to be in a relationship with somebody and to communicate with somebody is you have to have a responsive communication partner who is ping-ponging with you. It's not one-sided, and speech doesn't occur in a vacuum. It happens out in the real world. And so when we help teach parents this, or we help teach paras, or we help teach, educators how to have that connection with their student, it changes everything because the student's view of the world goes from down here to, oh, now I see you. Now I like you. Now I want to have back and forth interaction with you because this is fun and it's meaningful and it makes sense. And I want to talk to you because you have honored and respected me for who I am, and you have motivated me by my interests, which may be, singing and dancing or playing, with very preferred comfort zone items, which are toys that they might really like. And we're going to meet them there with those and get them to engage with us with those things, not as a reinforcer, like, oh, you don't get this unless you talk to me, but we're going to join them in that. So if they just like driving cars and throwing them off the table, well, guess what? We're going to drive those cars and throw them off the table first in order to get that child to understand that you're connecting with them and you're doing what it is they love.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do what the child loves being with you. The child's love of others is others doing what the child loves. So it's as simple as that. You've created that connection. The child loves to be with you, interact with you, talk with you down the road. So we've covered, the first steps up that language mountain is shared attention, engagement in relationships, and then building two-way back and forth communication with gestures. And then you can move to expressive communication. You can start to use those first single words because you now understand this is how we talk to other people. We look at them, we engage with them, we gesture with them, just like we're doing tonight. I mean, I'm doing a lot of the talking, so we're not necessarily having a back and forth at this moment, but we will and we do. And if I was looking over here and I was not, engaging with you or using my gestures to emphasize and using my face to, be emphatic, then it wouldn't be so interesting and we wouldn't really want to talk anymore because we'd be like, check out, I'm out.
I'd be sad.
Yeah.
I'd be sad. Yeah, I love how that sometimes it's the little things we need to hear again, and sometimes the little things that parents need to hear that right that they want to start from the top down, like let's just bombard them with words and versus like, okay, let's start. And then of course when you were saying that the kids are going to want to interact with you if you're doing things they like. Well, that's human nature for all of us. I mean, don't we kind of gravitate towards people that like the same things we do? I miss my early morning walker. I've moved, and so I became friends with a woman who also wanted to get up at 10 minutes to 5 a.m. So 4:50 in the morning, ladies and gentlemen. And we both loved it, and we became, I know that's kind of a strange analogy, but it's true that even as adults and just as humans, we do gravitate to people that enjoy what we enjoy. So that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
Enjoy what they enjoy.
Yeah. And that's why I know I say a lot of times, when I sit down in that initial conversation and I say, you already have your dance with your child, and that's the wrong dance, but let me teach you a different dance because this dance may be, a dance that's going to help get better, foundational skills, that back and forth, that connection. And that engagement so that the child and you have a different relationship than what you're used to. Or even, therapists, especially, I was a professor, I've done, a lot of mentoring young students and, training parents. And it seems so simple what I'm talking about, right? It seems like, why is this so mind blowing? And really is because, a parent gets that diagnosis for their child of having autism and they go into full throttle of, I need to fix them. I need to cure them. I need to, do this. And so they're not doing it to, make things more difficult for their child, but they want them to talk. And so they just start, drilling them and skilling them and doing, things that are really not so functional for communication that actually makes communication go in the opposite direction. Because if you're working with a child and you're, trying to say this, say that, trying to get them to imitate you at all costs, it's really, at what cost are you doing that? You're losing
Sure.
a lot of what you want to do. And they're going to say, as soon as you're done with this, I'm out of here. I'm going to go over here and play with the things I like, and I'm not going to want to interact with you. Instead, if you go and do the things that they like and meet them where they're at and join them in that, you're going to create an instant connection and then help them move up that language mountain more successfully. So you don't want to bring them over to you. You want to bring them, you want to join them and meet them where they're at least in the beginning. And then as you climb and you become more successful and the child becomes, more successful and more communicative, then the script can flip and you can be more adult directed and you can be much more structured, let's say, instead of child centered, because the child already has the foundation. So they already feel regulated. They're sharing attention with you and they're regulated and ready to engage and relating to you and have that understanding of two-way back and forth communication with gestures so that they can have more complex two-way communication with words and phrases. And, if we have a child who sometimes with autism and other diagnoses have verbal apraxia, which is a motor speech disorder, most SLPs out there, know what that is. And that's pretty common in individuals with autism. There's motor planning issues. They have apraxia. And so we still need to build these foundational skills. And then if they're not able to motor plan for verbal communication and speech, then we can augment it. And then we can bring in augmentative communication. There is no hierarchy for using augmentative communication, but I will tell you, once you have the foundations and you start climbing the language mountain, the child is just like when they start using verbal speech, it will be much more effective because they understand how to have that back and forth interaction and they want to connect and interact with you. So they have the motivation to use it to communicate with you. So there's always an opportunity for the child to talk no matter what is happening in their brain.
Amazing. I love the way that you brought in the term regulation because I think that's a term that parents and staff will understand when, if we're saying we're really wanting to connect, we're wanting shared, joint attention, shared attention, and a two-way interaction. But if we say because this, we are working on regulation, I think in the schools we'd be like, yes, 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 yes. That's one of those keywords I think that will be good for school SLPs, saying that the first step is regulation, co-regulation even. Yeah, I like the way you brought that in because that resonated with me. So we've got shared shared attention, engagement, relatability. Then we're doing that two-way back and forth, communicative intent. And then three, we're getting into expressive.
Yeah, we're expressive, but we're using gestural communication. So we've got that
Mhm.
pointing, showing, giving, moving closer to the item of interest. So we've got proximity. We've got lots of, gestural communication that we can use, even crying and getting
Mhm.
mad and stomping our feet and screaming. That is still a form of communication. And we know exactly what they're trying to say and what they're trying to, communicate to us through that. And that's okay. And we don't tell them no, and we don't tell them stop it. And we just, acknowledge how they're feeling. And we say, I know this is really hard. You're so sad. This is, you don't feel, you feel like frustrated. We start labeling their emotions early on to work on the feeling life of the child as well. It's this social emotional learning is all part of this piece as well, and trying to build that in so early so that we're honoring again and respecting not all types of communication, right? And
Mhm.
so the that's part of regulation. There's self-regulation and there's mood regulation. So level one, down at that bottom of the mountain, like where shared attention is, that aligns with self-regulation.
Mhm.
If you aren't feeling regulated in your body so that you can attend and you can interact with somebody, you're derailed right there. And so that happens a lot in schools. Kids are ours, they have to sit in a chair and they have to listen and they have to, comply. And that's really hard if don't have sense, you're not regulated, your senses aren't integrated, and you're not, that's a whole nother topic.
Yep.
But yes, but if we really take that into consideration, and then that's just where the child isn't ready for that type of really, structured type of intervention. They're trying so hard just to sit in their seat
Mhm.
that, basically and comply, that they're really not having back and forth communication. So that third level of expressive gestural communication, the next is really actually all about then receptive language is intact at that point, because then the child can follow simple commands and routines. So they can give you things, they can go get things, they can follow simple directional commands, those kind of things. That's also part of communication and talking to each other, because when we're interacting, there's going to be a lot of things that we may say the child has to understand in order to have a response. So it again just doesn't exist in this vacuum. It
Right.
encompasses so much more than just imitation.
Right
And
on, right? Sorry,
mhm.
my coworker, sorry, cockapoo has decided to come. I got him busy now. Sorry. He decided to join the party. I got him situated. We're good.
Okay.
He was getting my joint attention.
He was stealing your attention
He
too.
was stealing my attention. Exactly. Exactly. He was getting me dysregulated. So let me get back to
There you,
regulation.
there you go.
So I love this. So okay, so we've got to step four, which is the receptive being able to um like go and get it, follow that direction, just understanding the language that is being spoken. Or not
Communicated.
even spoke I should not that's what I need to say is we should I just fell into that trap of spoken. No, communicated. That we, right? Like we don't, speech doesn't have to be the only way. Um, I just want to say, Lori, thanks. Lori Mack just, she said, explaining the term regulation to parents is so important. I agree. I think we need to start there. I mean, if we're not regulated, so many things cannot happen.
Oh,
When we, I know, big changes in my life have happened, and I have been feeling very out of sorts, as my mother would say. And so I've realized, things happen when you're not regulated. You miss things because
yeah.
you're so busy trying to get your internal regulation going. So yeah, I agree. I think starting with that. All right, sorry, let's get back on track.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I mean, we can digress, a few
yeah.
minutes into that, because it really is a very important thing. And so I don't know if the main audience is speech language pathologists.
Yes, we are. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so as speech language pathologist is in our training, we really don't learn a lot about regulation, at least in, the graduate programs that I've taught in, and, back in the day when I was a graduate student. And it's so important. It's really, as we just said, it's so key. And if a student isn't, or a person or anyone
Yeah.
isn't feeling regulated, you're never going to want to interact or to communicate or to, stay in the environment or any of those things. And so helping parents to understand and reading their child's cues, or the teachers reading the child's cues. Is it too loud in here? Is it, too hot in here? Do they need their basic needs met? Do they need some water? Do they need something to eat, right? And helping them get regulated so that they can start climbing the language mountain to share attention and engage and have back and forth interaction is really, is a pre level, because it's, first and foremost for everything else. And so, yeah, when I brought that up and then you brought it up and somebody else brought
Yeah,
it up,
yeah.
it really is something that I think we don't learn a lot about in our field. And in my practice, I'm blessed to have occupational therapists. So it's, Palm Beach speech and OT specialists. And all of our OTs are sensory integration trained. And so that means they're working with the seven senses with these children, the five that we all know: taste, touch, sound, smell, sight. But the other two, which are proprioceptive input, and the input to your joints and muscles and knowing, where your body is in space, that vestibular. And so a child who needs a lot of vestibular or proprioceptive input is not going to also feel regulated. And then you're stuck there. And that's, where then quote unquote behaviors come in.
Right.
And people think, the child is being behavioral, and it's not. It's a result of them feeling dysregulated. And so integrating those senses is really important for, will my child ever talk? Well, I'll tell you, when they feel regulated and when then they can climb the language mountain, they will get there.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, I think it boils down to that basic need. And then there's nowhere to go if we're stuck in that dysregulation and struggle of trying to find that. Yeah. Um, and yeah, Alex, thank you for jumping in. Talking about it's important, depending on the age of the child, that sometimes co-regulation is the goal,
Yeah.
because self-regulation is just not where they are yet. Thank you for bringing that up, especially with students, if we're working with young students or students that are more severely impacted by their disability. Can I, Linda Mack has just jumped in with a good analogy to share. She uses an analogy of a dimmer switch. Some of our kids are always all the way on or all the way off. And
Hmm.
sometimes just to be too much, which can sometimes be too much. Some of our children and some of us need to find a way to be somewhere in the middle. I love that. As my mother says, even keeled.
Yeah.
And well, she says it to me because she always says, Carolyn Martha, you are not even keeled. It's true. I'm a big, yeah, I have big feelings.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important. They have to be in that, what we call the optimal state of arousal. Like
Yep.
they can't be like over or under
Mm-mm.
responsive. If they are, then it's going to be challenging. And that's a lot of the work that, I do with parents, is just really helping them to understand their child's profile. What is their child's, comfort zones, meaning what do they like? What is their child's, where are they on the language mountain, and what is their sensory profile? Because all of those things, comfort zones, their language mountain profile and their sensory profile, all work together simultaneously. And so once parents and teachers, or paras or whoever's working with the
Mhm.
student, really understands that big picture and can profile an individual with autism by using these things, you will have a very easy time connecting, a very easy time helping them to be more regulated through co-regulation or just other strategies. And you will help them then have more successful interaction and communication so that the child will talk. And it's really, like I said, it's not a magic pill. It's not a magic wand. It's just knowing that this works, that I've done this for, years and years, that this is based in science. It's developmental relationship based intervention that has, lots of years of practice behind it. And it's a model that one can choose to acquire and to help support these students.
I like the fact that you're bringing in OT because in the schools we are just by nature collaborative. We work as a group where, it's, well, a lot of us SLPs feel siloed. I understand, me too. But really reaching out to our OTs for that support to help us understand what the student's sensory profile might be. And just help us work with that and give us some, I think, with some support there. Definitely. We do have a question, if that's all right. Nadia's asking, what would you suggest when parents are asking the same question? If they're saying, when will my child talk? Not will
Will.
they, but when will they? When is this going to happen? But maybe there's not really implemented strategies at home. There's not that carryover in the home setting. There are inconsistent attendance, and then in the schools, if you're only seeing them one time a week and there's no home carryover and there's inconsistent attendance, what would we do here?
Yeah. I mean,
That's a
that's
big one.
big question. It's a big, sort
Yeah.
of faceted question. I'll do my best to try
Yeah.
to answer, each little part of that. But I mean, really, what we've learned is, a child with mild autism, it robs about 2 years of their development. And so knowing that it's going to take a lot of work and it's going to take a lot of time and it's going to take patience and it's going to take the belief system that, if we work in this way, that we will get them there. So that's really number one, is trying to convince parents, of this and help them to see the results themselves by working alongside of you. We do have parents who are not going to be those parents, for various reasons. They're not trying to be non-compliant, but their lives are just, they're busy, they're working. A speech pathologist at schools only gets to see them once a week, all these things. So all we can do is do the best we can do, but sticking true to our methods, because there is, a method to this madness, that even if it takes us twice as much time to get there because we don't have as much access to care or we're not seeing them as consistently, if we still stay true to this, that developmental trajectory will get there. It's just, I can't tell you when. And I really can't tell you when with any child, because there's slow movers, medium movers, and fast movers. And that's truly the way that this goes. And it's hard to know what the precursors are to some of these, children's success. Of course, frequency intensity over time really does make a difference. And, this was proven when I do a lot of work in the Caribbean. I have a nonprofit as well that I also run. And it started off by me going to the Caribbean for my birthday about 10 years ago. And by a friend who owns a Caribbean medical school. And she took me there, and I met a family with a child with autism from the provost of the university. And when I talked to this mom and said, your child has autism and he needs to have speech and he needs to have OT and all these things, first they said, what's autism? This was just how unaware they were of autism and the diagnosis and the therapies. But the point of the story is that there were no resources there. And so I said to the parents, look, if you can come to the US, at that time, I was a full-time professor at Nova Southeastern University in Fort Lauderdale, and I was doing a research project on developmental relationship-based therapy and helping the child to talk. And I said to the parent, here's my card, my business card. And if you can make it to Florida, I'll give you, free therapy, because I had a grant to provide this therapy for the research project. I didn't think I'd ever hear from her again. And she emailed me and said, here's my ticket information. I'll be there next week. And I'm staying for 6 weeks. And I was like, what? Okay. I was a professor and I had graduate students. But what I did is I pulled all the students I could in OT and in speech. And we intensively saw this child for 6 weeks, 3 hours a day, 5 days a week for 6 weeks. He was non-speaking when he arrived. He was speaking in 3 and 4 word phrases when he left, in 6 weeks, using this model, being very true to it, and looking at those 3 things of his profile. What is his unique profile? What is his comfort zones? What is his sensory profile? And what is his functional developmental level, and where is he on that language mountain? So with that being said, is yes, more, isn't always better, but if you are able to do these things and stay true to this, you can get there faster than without those things. So I'm not sure if I really answered your question. What do you do with these parents? There's really not, you can't force people. You can bring them to the water. You can't make them drink, and it's hard as professionals. I've been doing this for almost, 30 years. And it hurts my heart sometimes because I know if we are working more as a team, we're going to get to the other side a lot faster. But, I still believe in the methods and the principles, and I still work in the same manner, just on at a slower pace. And sometimes you might be surprised, and the child, it clicks, and they just don't have to, they don't have a lot of that outside support, which would be great, but it's not always going to happen.
And I think it's a good point when someone just jumped in. I don't know why I can't see the name, but oh, I think it's Jennifer. Thank you. Yes, Jennifer said that you really, sometimes part of it is coaching parents on not understanding, but being able to see the small changes and celebrating those small changes and the small progress, because she's saying there's when you're only looking for big changes, you're not gonna, it's like not being able to see the forest through the trees because you're wanting to see, you're looking at the mountain,
You look at the top of the mountain. You're
top
looking
of the mountain.
top of the mountain, language mountain. You're looking for conversations, you're looking for sentences, but it just maybe not there yet because you have to start at the bottom. And I like that comment, as well, as because the one thing is when you are doing parent coaching, which a lot of this is parent coaching, it's parent mediated, you're working with the parent. And when that parent feels that shift in connection, it's like the light bulb goes off and they want more. And they crave that interaction so much now because now they understand how to connect and to interact with their child, which they didn't know how before. And not because they weren't trying, they just didn't have the tools in the toolbox, which is this. And so we're giving them that gift to be able to understand certain ways. It's just small little shifts in the way that they, like I said, pretend your brain fell out of your head, forget all the things that you were doing before. I'm going to teach you a new dance. I'm going to teach you a new way. And there's just this, happiness. And I've seen parents go through this progression of feeling very depressed and very despondent and very sad, with the diagnosis. And also they'll say to me, if I'll say, okay, because at the beginning of the therapy, a lot of times I'll do a baseline video and I'll say, okay, you play with your child how you typically would play with them, and I'm going to videotape it. And then we sit down and we watch it together so we can work on making these changes and helping them see reflectively what they are doing that they could do differently. But when, they're in the beginning, sometimes they'll say, well, I don't know how to play with my child. My child doesn't interact with me. That's why I'm here. And I'm like, okay. So, we kind of know where we are. And those small little changes, as soon as the child shares attention and shifts to the parents, which they never did before, they're like, oh my gosh. And then they want more and the child wants more. And you create this little monster where the child
I
actually
love it.
doesn't leave the parent alone. And now they're like, I can't do the dishes and I can't do the laundry and I can't do the things because the child is constantly coming at me to interact and to talk to me and to interact
Hi,
with
sweetheart.
oh, it's cute dog.
Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, it's so
I
cute.
need you to sit on down, my friend. Sorry.
Share your attention with me
I
and give
know
it to
he's
me.
being, yeah, let me give him a treat here. He knows that I brought these in here, so let me just grab him one. But what I wanted to say is like helping the parents see, and when they realize that there's actually communication happening, that's magical.
Yeah.
That's magical. Yeah.
And that's where I say there is no magic wand or magic pill, but I have had, hundreds of parents say, you just wave your magic wand and this happens. And I'm like,
Oh,
no, I'm like, it's not, I thank you. It's very sweet, but anyone can do it. And that's what I really love about the model is it's like I said, it's about having fun and doing what the child loves. And then the child will love being with you. And that's, helps with regulation, that helps with shared attention and engagement and two-way communication. And you keep climbing up that language mountain. And so that is how we, get children to talk. And it's a powerful thing and something that I wish all speech language pathologists knew, and hopefully everyone here is really going to, change their viewpoint a little bit, and try this. I mean, just simply be with the child and watch the child and observe the child and wait and listen to what it is that they really like and that they're really wanting in that moment. And you can meet them where they're at, and then you become a little snake charmer to woo them into wanting to be with you because you have joined them and they have found connection to you through that.
Right, powerful. And I think it's so important um, to help parents see that, help staff see that, because when you start seeing that little change, it does become huge. Um, so where are we on the steps of our language mountain?
So after we have that receptive language, the giving and the getting and the, following simple commands and routines, then we have single words.
Mm-hmm.
And then those single words are meaningful. They're not just scripted, imitative, gestalt types of language. They have meaning, and there is back and forth to those, and there's that ping ponging. So I use the analogy of not only climbing the language mountain, but building a house. So
Okay.
build the foundation, then the walls are that back and forth ping ponging of expressive language with our, single words and our sentences. And then we get to the top of the language mountain and there's our conversations. And that's when we put the roof on the house or we reach the peak of the mountain. And so they go hand in hand, either building the house, you can use either analogy you want, or climbing the language mountain. They both get you to the point of where you are. And when I talk, if the language mountain analogy doesn't get people, you can use the house. And I'll show them, literally show a parent a picture of two different houses, like the straw house that's falling apart or the brick house, the three little pigs. And that one's beautiful and it's got a strong foundation, right? When you build a house, you use a strong foundation. Then you put the walls on and then you put the roof on. And that's really important for people to understand, because if you want to try to put your roof on and you don't have a strong foundation, your house is going to collapse and it's just not going to be strong, and it's not going to support what you want it to do in the future. So those analogies are really important for parents to understand, and that's how you get the buy-in, and that's how you get them to, when they say, will my child talk? And I'll say, they will. But let's see how we're going to get there, and where is your child right now on this language mountain? Where do you think? And I'll open it up to them. Where do you think they are? I'll show them this. And if they say, well, my child, doesn't do any of these things, but I want them to start using single words. And I'll say, well, where is that on the language mountain? Right? It's up here. And we got to go back to the bottom and let's start climbing. And I can either climb it slow, I can climb it medium, or I can climb it fast. And that's really the child's in the driver's seat there,
Mm-hmm.
with the support of the parent or the teacher or, the caregiver or whoever is working with the child using these principles and methods to get them there.
I think what you're saying, that using an analogy, but maybe also the visual of that with the developmental, like showing them, really
Yeah.
plotting them on where they are, where they are in the house building on the blueprint, or
Yeah.
where they are, geographically on that mountain, and being realistic and saying, this is where they are. This is, of course, this is where our end goal, but you're right. We can't put a roof on a house that has no walls
And no foundation.
and no foundation. Right, right. No foundation. We can't just start with the roof.
Right. Yeah. And
Yeah,
they won't hold up.
right.
Yeah. So, they're critical things that are really just not that hard in the scheme of things. There's really just no way around the language mountain. In my opinion, it's hard sometimes convincing parents to start at the bottom of the mountain. And so how do we convince them that we shouldn't, force speech? And that is possibly going to impoverish their language in the future. So we want to make sure that it's rich and that it's meaningful and that there's communication instead of, the opposite of that.
Is there because I did mention a visual, I don't have one, but do you possibly have one that you use with parents at work, that's something that
I
we
don't
could?
know if I can share my screen at all, but do I have that right?
You know what? I don't know if I've never shared a screen when I've been doing this, so I'm not sure. But do you have something like maybe on your website that you could send us to or
It's not on my
okay.
website, but yeah, I mean, it's if anyone, it does I don't know if my information is out there, like my email. If somebody wants to
Mhm.
reach out to me via email, I'd be happy to send them the visuals. I created them myself, so they're not, like a trade
Oh,
kind of thing, but there's
mhm.
something that I use and I have no problem sharing them with
You
you.
know what would be great if you wouldn't mind if you would I will email you and ask and share it and then we can actually attach it to this episode.
Sure.
So the episode notes, we can actually attach it so those that are listening could have access to that. So if that is all right, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I have
Yeah.
both the house visual and the
I
climate.
love it. Okay. So
Yeah.
then yes, I definitely yeah, everyone's like, yes, we want this. It's great. Yes. Um, So, a question would be, even with this entire model, is it possible a child would still not speak?
I mean, yes, it is possible.
Anything's
Yeah,
possible,
is
right? Yeah.
anything possible? And I mean, they're depending on, level of autism, there's three
Hmm.
levels of autism, things like that. But, what I do have to say is that, like, I have been doing this for almost 30 years. Even adults with autism, I started working with a 30-year-old, adult male who was non-speaking. And we don't do the same kinds of, tickle games and funny
Right.
things, but we're still doing the same thing. I'm still profiling his development. Where is he on the language mountain? What is his sensory profile? And what is his comfort zone? What does he like? And it works. And I interact with him in things that he enjoys and he likes, and we have back and forth communication. And then we started with augmentative communication, and he started using that, and he started speaking. And he started actually saying the words because the AAC was that bridge to communication, but we had built that foundation first so that now, after that, he never said hi or spoke to anybody. And after 6 months, he would walk up to every one of my therapists in my office and he'd say, hi, and he'd shake their hand. Oh, and he wanted to shake their
Wow.
hand and touch them. And he'd go up and he'd put his arm around them and be like, and this was a highly aggressive 30-year-old, man. And he was a snuggle bum once, he was in my office and we started working together and doing this. And he then started realizing people valued what he had to say and people wanted to talk. He wanted to talk to people and he wasn't aversive to talking to people because we opened up a whole new, world to him by just being kind and knowing who he was and where he was and not trying to get him to imitate and say things without building these prior foundational skills.
Wow. Wow. Yes. We're his family. Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, his family and him and him, how you changed a life of, I mean, I'm sure that at 30 they thought, oh, it's not,
Yeah,
But you're also saying it's never too, yeah, never say never. It's never too late.
no,
Right,
no,
but the process is the same. Start at the beginning. Take the small steps for the slow. Take the medium steps if they're a medium mover. Once you start at the foundation, if they're a fast mover, move with them.
yeah. You're
Um,
gonna move up the language mount. When they go up, you go up. When they go down, you go down. So that's also really important to remember is that, every day is going to be a different day. So like I can't just say, oh, well, they were, at the expressive gestural communication level. Why aren't they doing that? Today I can't share attention with them. Well, then we go back down and we work on getting that shared attention again and that regulation and that engagement, and then we move back up. So every day is a different day, just like us. Some days we're more talkative, some days we're not. Some days we feel better, some days we don't want to, we want to just hide in our bed, you know? So that's
Right.
okay. And just because you have autism doesn't mean you're not human. So we really want to make sure we honor and respect, that person for who they are and what day it is and, all of those things.
Right, that we're not losing traction if we have to start at
Well,
the beginning. Because some days I do need to take it slow for myself,
yeah.
and that's realistic. Yeah. Wow. This has been really amazing. I know that everyone that's listening, we've gotten so many thank yous. Um, and so I just want to, before we end, just talk about that I am going to email you. We're going to get some visuals. We're going to add that to this episode so we can get those. I know everyone's excited for that. I just want to thank you so much for coming on today and really sharing your decades of knowledge and evidence-based that proven with the case studies that you have shared with us that this has worked. That's what we're looking for, is that things that have, worked and why, and you've given us, you have empowered us with the tools to help our families build a house or climb the mountain. I love it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So I just want to thank everybody also that joined us today. This has been amazing. Now, if you've enjoyed this episode, please give us a like, leave us a review, share it with your fellow school-based SLPs. Don't forget that you will earn zero point 0.1 ASHA CEUs for just for listening. So head over to Speech Therapy PD, especially if you are listening live and you need live CEUs, do that today. We got more thank you. I think, yes, you've enlightened even seasoned SLPs is what we're getting from our listening audience. We love it. So I just want to thank everybody and encourage everyone to come back and join me in our next episode. But a big thank you, Sheryl. Thank you so much. This has been amazing. All right, everyone. See you
Thanks.
next time. Bye,
Bye.
guys.